Great, most powerful, heavenly Father Yahweh, this is your servant, toShalom Hawkins, being seated last day witnesses Hawkins and your high priest, Yeshua Messiah. Father Yahweh, thank you for this wonderful Sabbath, the start of your Sabbath day, Father Yahweh. We ask that you open our hearts, soul, and mind to this lesson, that one of the sermons that your last day's witnesses brought out in these last days, Father, to give us the knowledge and the wisdom that you've given him, Father Yahweh. We ask that you would be with our brothers and sisters, to heal them, to keep them safe and rejoicing, Father Yahweh, and to always remember your great plan, Father Yahweh. And we ask that you be with the ones that could not make it here, and the ones that are incarcerated, Father, held bound against their will, Father Yahweh, the great kind Yedidiah, Father Yahweh. We ask that you be with him and bless that message that he's bringing forth to those men up there. And we do ask all these things, your son's name, Yeshua Messiah. Hallelujah, Yahweh. Praise Yahweh. You may all be seated. Okay. We're going to be in the 11th book of Yisrayl, in chapter 11. The prophecies for this generation's number one. These prophecies for this generations are all coming to pass and will come to pass in a very short time now. This was on 3/26/2011. In this first one, when I read it, it kind of fits what we went through last week. I'll read it and then you'll understand. So in verse number 2, he says, I know it's hard to rejoice when all this trouble is going on, but that's what we're commanded to do. And I know I played a film the last time we were up here and showed you how horrible things are getting in this world. And then I said, come on, you can beat that. You can rejoice. Well, that's what Yahweh's telling you to do. And that's what I'm telling you to do, is rejoice. He said, praise Yahweh. And you can, last week he showed us what was still going on in the world. What occurred in Colorado. Not Colorado, I'm sorry. Connecticut. And, that stuff doesn't, it affects different people in different ways, especially if you lost a child. And you know what they went through. And you want to rejoice. And later on throughout the week, this week, I got to rejoice and trust in Yahweh's plan, as he talks about here in a little bit. And and that's what we got to remember, that we got to remember what Yahweh's plan is about and what we're going to bring an end to. And an end to is what took place last week. Okay? And we need to stop that. And pastors got the answers from Yahweh to give to this world. Okay? Praise Yahweh. It says, but what you're going to do is trust in Yahweh's plan. And Yahweh has a perfect plan. That plan, of course, is to stop what you are seeing right now in the world. It is not worth rejoicing about. Okay? Verse 3. It's worse than just the earthquakes. But if you're listening closely to today's sermon, you'll be greatly encouraged. Your faith will be greatly strengthened. You'll see how little time we have left. Some of the worst things that have taken place are the prophecies concerning sickness and diseases and the disease epidemic. And he goes on to talking about HIV and how HIV has spread. And in these last generations, how they have all this knowledge. And he goes on to talking about what they've done and how they don't really have the knowledge to fix this because, they aren't here in the house of Yahweh. Okay? Let's skip over to verse 18. It says, "But I want you to write down some facts here. Orville and Wilbur Wright on December 17th. Now we're looking at a world right now that's got jet airplanes that can go around the world in one day. We've got jet missiles that can carry bombs from here to Russia in a few minutes right now. But the Wright brothers took the first flight, the very first flight. If you can get that in your head, December 17th, 1903. Now from that, if you can imagine just a few years that we've seen right here, seen right now before us, with us being the last generations, we've got nuclear bombs that can destroy countries. Just the testing of nuclear bombs and that are causing great earthquakes. So you can see, he's pointed out that just their testing, everybody, you hear about these cruise missiles and, the testing they did in New Mexico, and who else, we don't even know where else they've tested these nuclear weapons. So just the testing of the nuclear bombs have caused great earthquakes. They're destroying the earth. They think they're smarter than they are. Now how do I know? And he's asked, how do I know this? Because of the scriptures, the prophecies in your Bible that you refuse to believe. Some of you are so much of a fool inside your heart that you just cannot believe what this great Creator, Yahweh, has put in front of you here in the house, and telling you, you can be part of my kingdom forever. I called you here for a reason. And that's what we got to remember, brother. You can be part of this kingdom, and He's called us here for a reason. Just like He said over in verse 2, for this perfect plan. Okay? And you'll see more of that plan tomorrow. It says, verse 19, well, on December 17, 1903, they flew all of 120 feet. That's not even the length of this sanctuary. December 17, 1903, the prophecy said that knowledge would be increased and people would be driving to and fro, jolting together with lights on their cars. Yes, the prophecies that we are looking at. Think of what the magnificent minds that we are dealing with here to look down and advance to our generation. Think of it. And that's the fact. And then the fact that He said, I'm going to establish a house. Then He called you to it. He said, and then He said, rejoice. Rejoice at my feast and count to you as righteousness. Well, in verse 12 it says, well, in order to rejoice with all this crapola that goes on in this world right now, you've got to look forward to Yahweh's plan. And you being part of the completion of that plan. And that's what we got to remember in these last days, that we have to take these instructions that Pastor gives us in these last days and carry them out to our best of our abilities, and be, and listen to every word that He says, because He says a lot in these sermons that we need to go over. It says, yes, when the seventh Malach speaks, and you in it right now, we're in that time period when the bombs were established. It says Harry Truman, he was the president at my time. In my time, he dropped the A-bomb. It's called the A-bomb. He dropped one on 6th of August and the other on the 9th of August. He dropped two of them. This was in 1945. In 1945, Harry Truman did it. Now, this plane wasn't even invented. They flew 120 feet in 1903. And in 1945, they dropped 2 bombs, destroying Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Just 1 bomb each, and they still feel the effects of that of 1945. Here's some, I have some pictures. That's the bomb right there of Hiroshima. If you can see, that's Hiroshima before. Is that coming up? Yeah? Okay. That's Hiroshima before the bomb. I don't know how many days, or might have been a day before. And this is the picture after. You can see that's at ground zero. It's just there's nothing left. There's just a few buildings left from that picture with all those houses, all those people that were living there. You can see the destruction. There's the airplane. I think that's Nagasaki there when they dropped the bomb. That's one of the airplanes there. In verse 11, he says, I was born 1934. Now, if you think about a miracle taking place and Yahweh saying, I'm going to rise up Anoki, I'm going to prove a place for him, provide a place for him. I'm going to train him. I'm going to start bringing my message and establishing my house so you can be part of it. Think of what a magnificent offer this is. So he's doing all this for us, and so we can take part of it. And that's what we need to do in these last days. Can you imagine the schools of higher learning being able to offer something like this? The schools of higher learning is what dropped the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So you can see their level of knowledge and what they are after, and what we are after also. They haven't got sense enough to use anything for peace or helpfulness. They want to turn everything to war. Why? And what? And you want to be part of that. Think of what you're doing when you go back into the world, leaving Yahweh's house that He established right here. He established here right now, and go back out to play around in this damnable world because of some fast-moving music and gay times. You got to have crap for brains. We need to remember that, brothers. I mean, that's why it's important that we go over these. He's breaking it down for us how stupid it is to go back into the world and do the things that we came out of when we got baptized. We got rid of that old man, and He's showing us through this war and destruction that they're teaching out there. And why would we want to go back out there? Let's turn over to page 118. And he's talking on verse 15. It says the Model T that he is talking about running to and fro. I remember those. He remembers those Model Ts. They were invented in 1908. The first Model T was invented in 1908. That was 26 years before I was born. All of this was taking place in the last 100 years. And in this generation, as Yahweh said, let's turn over to page Matthew 24, because this is the prophecy that your Savior is giving to you, who is now high priest over the house of Yahweh in these last days. the Savior, Yeshua Messiah, is your high priest. He's watching you closely because he wants you to be part of this family. That the opportunity you have right now, and he asked if we were going too fast for us. Let's go down to 16. He says in Matthew 24, the Savior also asked about this generation. He's going through all of these things that's going to take place in verse 29. He shows you the nuclear bomb in verse 29. He shows you the nuclear bomb that scientists have made tests of this time period. They know it can darken the sun. If you notice verse 7, you'll also see the Savior saying earthquakes are going to increase. Earthquakes. You see that word earthquakes? The reason I'm pointing this out to you is that they're being caused. They're caused. There's a cause for this to be taken place. And Yahweh says they're going to be mightier and they are going to be more numerous. And the Savior said they're going to be earthquakes in various places. They're going to be disease epidemics. And if you go to some of the pictures, I couldn't show them up here, but you can see some of the things that that bomb did to those people. One guy, he doesn't even have a face. Little children are completely burned, just totally blackened from that bomb, and they're still suffering from that bomb in 1945 to this day, you know. Yes, we have them all over the world. They are trying to hide them, trying to keep it covered up, but people are dying. Some close around us are dying from what they did and what their ancestors did in this generation. And that's why it's so important that we keep cleansing. Last week with the children, one of the lessons was cleansing. Keep making sure that we're cleansing. Getting that stuff that maybe not necessarily we did, but our ancestors. We need to make sure that we cleanse our bodies because it's still in our bodies. So remember to be cleansing, to get that stuff out of, so you'll have a clean body. But you're going to see these earthquakes in place after place. And then, if you go over to verse 31, he tells you to look here, to look for something here. He gives you a parable. He says in Matthew 24:32, Now learn a parable from the fig tree. When the branch becomes tender and puts out leaves, you know that its summer is near. You know that they're putting out their leaves right now, and the little figs right now, and we know that summer is upon us. In verse 32 or verse 33, it says, in the same way, he says, when you see all these things, earthquakes, the bombs, he's talking now about a generation. Now that he's coming and the end of the age is near. That's one thing. At the very door, he's coming. Yeshua is coming. He shows in verse 30 and 31, know that he's coming in very near. At the very door, he says, verse 34, truly I say to you, it's at the very door he's coming. Do you have some time to waste? He says, I don't think so. I think it is very thoughtful of it to showing that you're not rejoicing in Yahweh. You're rejoicing in stupid, and the more you listen to that kind of crap and let it fill your mind, the more you crave it. It's like the uncontrollable lust. Let it go, and your mind will get worse. Day after day, you'll destroy it. You'll destroy what Yeshua has already put in your mind, just about thinking this kind of just by thinking this kind of crap. And Khan Levi talked about last week. He also went over that uncontrollable lust in his sermon. So we need to keep, rejoicing Yahweh and not rejoicing in the worldly things, and keep our focus on Yahweh's plan in these last days and what Pastor is bringing forth, and what he wants us to, what our goal is, and what we're supposed to be accomplishing with the peaceful solution and promoting these and becoming teachers. Okay? In verse 20, well, here he shows in verse 32, he shows you are the branch. Then verse 33, he says, when you see these things, now know that my coming is here. It's near, even at the door. He's going to find you when he gets there. Where will he find you? Off getting a drink of booze, somewhere where you shouldn't have been, where you should have been studying, or at home studying? Take every minute you can to cram for this final exam. That's what you should be doing. You should be finding joy in Yahweh. And that's what we got to remember. We need to be studying, we need to be bringing this material with us whenever we go places. The tapes, the sermons, people with their phones, putting sermons on their phones and listening to this whenever we have a spare moment to this message. It says in verse 34, notice closely. He says, truly, truly, I say to you, this generation will not pass. He says, this generation, I say, this marks it. Let me read it to you again. The airplanes was only invented in 1903. Man had been on earth for 6,000 years at that time. But the plane that started this generation, they had planes. They had to invent planes to carry bombs, to darken the sun with those bombs. The inventions of that was not brought about in Daniel's time. He had no planes to fly. Think of what's going on here. So Yahweh allowed the knowledge to be increased just a little to prove to you what this world will do with it. He says, what if you had the power right now that Yahweh has, and you had the brain capacity to go here and play around in this stupid world after Yahweh called you out? Someone told me yesterday that they saw a dog catch a squirrel. Then they said they saw the dog eat about half of it. Then it vomited up the squirrel. Now I'm not trying to make you sick. I'm just showing you what you look like to in Yahweh's eyes. When you go out and play around in the world, he vomits up this half of the squirrel. Then he turns around and he eats it again. That's exactly what the Apostle Kephas said you look like to Yeshua, who's about to come here to get you, and he will find you in an unexpected moment. He said he will. So we need to remember, where we're at, what we're doing, every day, every second of our lives? Are we doing the things that we're being trained here at the House of Yahweh? Hopefully we all are. So we won't be caught unexpected, somewhere where we're not supposed to be. Because, pastors brought it out many times, what Yahweh's plan is, what the goal is. He's had the young priests talk about the cars and the inventions, and they brought out, the sermons before the kahans and pastor about the computers, about the bombs, and how much technology has come in these last days. And has it benefited this world? No. The only thing that's going to benefit this world is the peaceful solution in Yahweh's laws. We need to remember that. And when I go out in the world, I deal with a supply house, and there's a guy that I talk to probably more than my wife on the phone during the week, because I deal a lot of business with him, and he's never really asked me any questions about religion. He knows I'm in the house, but I think it was yesterday that he asked me. He asked me when the end was going to come. He asked me what has to be in place, and he started asking me all these questions. They know where to get the answers, but okay, they hear what pastor's saying, okay, and in time they will come. They will all be here, okay. So remember that. I didn't give him all the answers. I was going to let pastor give him the rest, okay. Okay. Let's go to verse 24. You've got to fulfill the prophecies, and Yahweh is guiding this. It's not like it's just occurring. Yahweh is guiding it. He's guiding this work. He shows it to. He saw it. Let me start. He saw to it that the house was established, just as he said it would be in Isaiah 2. Then he established his house, and then he started calling people to it. And he actually offered them salvation. And he said before that time, before the foundation of the house of Yahweh was laid in these last days, that there was no salvation. Where were all the witnesses? They didn't even hear the words until I said there were witnesses. Till pastor said there was witnesses. They didn't hear the words of the house of Yahweh either. And now all of them are wanting it after we have made it famous, after Yahweh's made it famous, and they are starting to want it. And then they start trying to steal it, using the courts of the lands to try to steal the house of Yahweh. And you can see that what Yahweh's plan, He's established it. He's put someone over it in these last days, just like He's put someone over every house that He's established. And it's only been one person or two witnesses in these last days. And how He is calling these people out there. They are listening. They are getting the message, that pastor is preaching and publishing these last days, and the hard work that all of us are doing to get this message out in this time period. So remember this knowledge that has been increased, and the destruction that the amount of war that has gone on and the death that we have to stop. That's our job, to stop this by using the peaceful solution, by getting teachers, by you being trained to be teachers, to go out there to teach this message. Okay? So at this time, if you all please stand. It's my great opportunity to present the great Kahan Ilya Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. Speaking of this great work that's taking place in these last days that's been established here in Abelin, Texas. And remember, being established under the authority of the two witnesses. Remember, Pastor said, being done back at the homestead, once Jacob returned from Israel, being established under the authority of both witnesses. And that was the first time that this work was established. And it wasn't established anywhere else. Even the work in Odessa was never established. Only here in Abelin, in the chief nations of all the nations. And of course, Yahweh not only named his witnesses, called them by name, but the miraculous birth that Pastor also spoke about of his older brother, 1 year older brother named Vernon, naming him, actually calling his name, in a place that was considered to be the ends of the earth, the last established place on the face of this earth. Now, how more exact could Yahweh be with these things, and how much more could someone show us that we would believe? Of course, these things are for the believers only, and of course the unbelievers do return back to the vomit. That dog that ate half the squirrel and throws it back up, and of course they go eat it again, readily eat it again, and go back into their ways of this world. And of course they enjoy it for a while, and then they wonder why they suffer. And of course we have school shootings. And the world's the magnification of the awe that everyone stands in is like, how could this occur? And we're asking, how could it not occur? But it is what you've created it to be. It's what we've allowed our society to become. And it's only going to get worse. Technology has increased in abundance, but so has stupidity in these last days. Foolishness is at an all-time high. And Yahshua Messiah said clearly, "O fools and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken." That is what is allowing these things to take place. Think of all the politicians that stand before CNN and MSNBC and CNBC and Fox News, and think of all the things they tell, or things they don't answer. You can think of them by name, some of the most elite politicians, but then tell me one thing that you can remember that they've done for the country. Just tell me one that you can remember. Now, there's a lot of arguing takes place, and there are some that are trying to get things done, but you learn very quickly, and so do the politicians, that it's not one person doing something. But when things occur that are drastic, of course, everybody wants to put their 2 cents into it, but how many of them actually want to do something? Of course, the NRA today coming out saying, well, we need to put an armed guard in every school. We had an armed guard in Columbine when it was shot up. It didn't help. Why are we as a society coming to the point where we say, well, and this is a quote, that the only thing that stops a bad man with a gun is a good man with a gun? And the question is, why have we let society come to the mindset of people need to carry guns to protect themselves from other people? Why do people even pick up a gun and think to hurt someone else? Because that's what we've allowed our society to become. That's what we've taught our society over these years. It doesn't take much to even look into the history of even school shootings and see how much it's increased just in the last 10, 15 years. It's grown dramatically. School shootings have almost desensitized our children in schools today. Somebody else got shot, okay. It's something that just occurs. Back when I was in school, which wasn't that long ago, that was unheard of. I never heard of someone getting shot in school. Today, it seems like it's on the news at least once every 6 months here in America. And carrying guns are not going to fix the problem. Banning guns are not going to fix the problem. I mean, if we ban marijuana, now we've got it legal again. Didn't cut down on it, did it? No, the only person that can't find illegal drugs are the ones that don't do them. You ban guns, the only person that can't find an illegal gun is the one that keeps the law and doesn't have one. Anybody that wants one will get one. And heaven knows they've sold them at record pace here recently because they think that they're going to ban assault rifles. So the sales have picked up dramatically, and people are enjoying, they're making money off the sales. It's feeding the economy. You know, I once heard a politician say that the best gun salesmen are the politicians. You mention gun control, and gun sales just skyrocket. You know, it's amazing. But we'll blame a gun, we'll blame anything, we just won't take responsibility for our actions. And that's what society has got to do. And that's what the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program teaches. For each and every person to take responsibility for his or her actions, not blaming someone else. No, someone didn't make you angry. The devil didn't make you do it. You chose to do it. I chose to do it. We chose to do it. And that's where the Peaceful Solution is going to make a difference. It's going to teach you that you do have a choice, and that you can make a change, and that you don't have to think this way, and that life is only miserable because we've made it miserable. And that's the only way that it's become that way. Money never fixes any problems. It's very common to see in the news where rich people die a very miserable death. They'll commit suicide. They'll die of drug overdoses. Being rich doesn't fix problems. In fact, being poor tends to help alleviate a lot of those problems. You don't quite have as many. You have what you need. Like here in the House of Yahweh, we have everything that we need. And that's a blessing. We're going to pick up in page 120. Page 120 in verse 34. Pastor says, the Holy Roman Empire, it was invented for that reason, to take over the world. And that's exactly what it's doing. It's taking over the world. It was prophesied before it did, 4 great beasts, 4 ruling kingdoms. People think, well, they're all gone. Pastor says, no, they've just changed names and faces, each one becoming stronger than the other. But the existing one is still there. Yes, the 4 ruling kingdoms, the Babylonians, the Medes, and the Persians, the Greeks, and the Romans, one absorbing the other. That's the reason we see all of these pagan festivals in these last days. That was a mixture of each and every one. Of course, the Roman Catholic Church taking in festival they're getting ready to celebrate next week. It's very well known. True Stories About Christmas goes into great detail. A booklet Pastor wrote to explain to everyone who desires to know how they were actually traditions that were brought into that religion to bring in more followers. The Catholic Church has always been more readily to change what brings money in, whatever it takes to get you in the door. And, of course, they'll serve you your own vomit back if you'd like it. They have plenty to go around. Now, each one of them becoming stronger, as Pastor says. And once again, he said, I'll bring more in detail about that later. And that was in the Feast of Passover of 2011. He did go into great detail about that. And he goes into verse 2. And, of course, this is Revelations chapter 6 and verse 2. And it says, and I look and behold a white horse. Well, that white horse represents righteousness. But as you can see, it's not righteous. It's fake righteousness. A fake righteousness that you see here, but being close, looking like righteousness, as Joshua said. They put on an appearance of righteousness, speaking of the Catholic Church, that was then called Pharisees, now called universal. You know, and we see these same things in these last days. You can drive down through especially small towns in Texas, and they'll have all of the lights in the downtown on Main Street, everything lit up. You know, and it looks so cheerful, so peaceful. Look at everybody having fun. And it looks very calming, and surely there can't be devastation comes from this. But then the reality of everybody is maxing out their credit cards, spending money they don't have, that doesn't come around until January 1st or January 31st. Whenever the bill comes due, that's when the reality sets in. And it's amazing because it takes 11 months for the reality to disappear, so they do it again, and then it sets in again the next year. But it's amazing how it's done. And you can actually hear people complaining about it, spending money. And of course, you know, hell hath no fury if that person doesn't get them a gift. But what could be wrong with that? You know, giving gifts. Giving these gifts out to everyone, winning them over, bribing them. And when you look into gifts, like Pastor said, when you see how evil a gift truly is, you would never give or accept another one. Pastor said numerous times, if you want to take a gift, of course it's acceptable from your mother or father, but not from other people. And a father giving a gift to a son is a gift to help him through life. Not a, pretty little bow on top of a box, and here's the greatest thing I've ever done for you. No, it's a way that you train and teach them. The greatest gift any parent could give their child is the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program by far. And if you don't do that for your child, you are truly holding your child back. You're holding your child back from the potential, the awesome potential that Yahweh has allowed that child to have in these last days. And if you want to see your child succeed, if you want to see your child become greater than you, which everybody should, if you want to see your child truly become a blessing to not only your family, but also to this city, this country, this world, this universe, by all means, every day put it in their mind. Every day. Never let it go. If you don't put that in their mind, they will find something to put into their mind. A child's mind wants to be fed, and it will look everywhere. And if you're not feeding it with what the House of Yahweh puts out, well, guess who's feeding it? The 4 ruling kingdoms. That's who's feeding the child's mind. There was today there was some 7th graders in Newtown, Connecticut that stood up and said that they're going to quit playing violent video games. They're going to take them all up and they're going to throw them away. And I really hope they stick to it, because they spoke to them on the news, and of course they asked them how many they collected. They said, well, none yet. And the news lady said, well, how many do you have? Oh, well, I haven't put mine in here yet. But I'm not going to play them anymore. And then before the 5-minute interview was over with, well, if I do play video games, it'll only be football, baseball, auto racing, something like that. And it was funny because the news anchor asked the father, she said, some of these games your children are speaking about, and these children were 7th graders, she said, you have to be 17 years old to buy these games. Why did you buy them for your children? And he immediately avoided the question. He'd make a great politician, but he didn't answer the question. He just said, well, I don't think these games hurt the people whose minds are innocent and know better. They don't, because they don't play them if they're innocent and they know better. And if you feed your children these things, I tend to wonder how much the hearts are going to hurt of these mothers and fathers that lost their children in Newtown, Connecticut. And then we all can feel for a parent like that. We have hope here in the House of Yahweh. But, it was no different than the cafeteria feeding them ham and unclean foods. It's no different than letting our children play the video games, letting them go out on dates, letting them do what they want to do and not teaching them. And we need to remember that in the House of Yahweh. If we let our children go, if we don't teach them, if we don't help them, if we don't give them direction, then who's going to be guilty upon their death? We really and truly need to examine what we do and how we do it. It doesn't take a gun to kill someone. You can do it with your very actions. In fact, the House of Yahweh for a long time had a shirt that said, you teach me with your actions. And that was a very appropriate saying, and we need to always remember that, because it is done that way. So if we're not feeding our children, this beastly system will feed our children. And it's very appetizing. It's very desiring for someone to want to do what this system offers. Now, look down to verse 38, and it says, China was talking about this week, and they said these uprisings were being done now with computer. And they were actually being sent out. 2 different people said from Italy, 2 different ones. One of them was Putin, the other one was Gaddafi. But they said they were coming straight from Italy, but they're organizing these by computer and sending their messages out to create this in the countries I suppose they want to take over, from what I see in prophecy right here. Oil-rich countries, because it says don't hurt the oil and the wine, just a little further down. And of course they did finally take over and kill Gaddafi, and they removed him. And of course now they have true peace in Libya. It couldn't be greater, I'm sure. Just like Egypt. You can turn on the news and see the true peace they have every day as they fight and kill one another. And of course we stand back and we think, man, what chaos is taking place in Egypt. And then you see about shootings in the mall, shootings in the school, shootings on the street, shootings here, shootings there. And 87% of the children that have been killed in the world have been killed in the United States. But we look at these other countries and it's like we'll pull out any little thing we can find. Child killed today in the Gaza Strip. But we leave out how many children were killed in the United States of America. It's mind-blowing how propaganda in news can truly make you see a picture that's not exactly true. And we've seen that with what they bring out about the House of Yahweh in these last days here in Abelin. The only place that could offer righteousness and life. And of course, they try to make it look like the worstest place on the face of the earth. In fact, if we didn't want to be here, we could leave it anytime we wanted to. But I personally don't want anything they have to offer. And I know many of you don't either. People say that we speak of ourselves as being ignorant, but we truly didn't know anything until we came to the house of Yahweh. We truly didn't. Continuing on, look over to continuing on with verse 30 over to page 39, page 121. On the end of the bottom page of 120, it says, that's what Scripture shows. Take peace from earth, and that they should kill one another, and there was given him a great sword. Yes, bombs, technical nuclear bombs. We saw one hit a building that belonged to Gaddafi. Another one goes straight in the same hole, goes down deeper, This is how technical bombs, these bombs are right now. They can actually go into a window. And of course, when the United States did that, they bragged immensely over that. Because when the United States, during Bill Clinton's years, when they went in and they had the conflict of Kosovo, they actually took trenches and poured oil into those trenches, and they lit it, and it clouded the city, and the United States couldn't get through. And that's when they developed the satellite bombs, where they could actually run them from satellite. Now they can actually send them through a window. And being the entrepreneurs that America has always been, of course, we'll drop a $5 million bomb on a $50 clay hut. And we'll consider that a success because it got through the window. Now, that in itself may sound ridiculous, but then take into consideration that we spent last year $711 billion reported dollars on military. And the rest of the world didn't spend but $700 billion. Everybody else in the world. And then you consider how when you take character education and you speak to them, funding's really tight. If we just took one bomb and let one clay hut stand up, we could actually fix this world. There's no doubt that we could fix it. One of the greatest deceptions is thinking that this can't be done. It can be done, it will be done, it's going to be done, and it's going to be done in this last great house. And many people are joining themselves to it. Now, Pastor says they have a great sword here to fight with. Of course, speaking of their bombs and planes and other devices, not necessarily a sword, but done under the authority of a sword. Not like that. I can't think of his name now, but of course he did think of it later. He was thinking of Titus, and that's who destroyed Jerusalem and took the artifacts to Rome. Yes, that's when the face of the Catholic Church, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Essenes, and the Herodians, that's when they moved to the Catholic Church, and that's where they established themselves on the 7 hills. Now, yes, he did have a sword. Well, this one is a great sword, great like the world earthquake. It's a great sword that can really do some damage, so much that it can darken the sun. To take peace from earth, notice, to take peace from earth. And of course, this was granted to them to do so. Now go back to the beginning of verse 4, and it says, "And there went out another horse that was red, and power was granted to him who sat upon it to take peace from the earth, and that it should kill one, and they should kill one another. And there was given to him a great sword," or a great fighting material to deal with. And of course, to kill one another would be with the great sword. That's what they used to kill one another, with this weaponry they have developed. Look over into verse 45. In verse 45 it says, "And I looked, and behold, a pale horse." Now here is where there's going to be much death, because it's brought about by war, by famine, by disease epidemics, and it's going to get exceedingly worse. Now, why are these things going to take place? Why are these wars going to take place? Why is the famine? Why is the disease? Because they're going to have to see that their way does not work. Their way of thinking, and it does start with their way of thinking, which leads to their emotions, which they're ready to blow someone up. If you can just convince a few people that some Arab people blew down some World Trade Center towers, then you can get the whole nation behind you wanting to kill Muslims. No matter what Muslim country you go into, you want to kill Muslims. And look how quickly that was done. People who never even considered a Muslim or an Islamic nation was ready to annihilate them. And remember, when all of that was done, when we went into Iraq, George Bush openly acknowledged Saddam Hussein didn't have anything to do with that. And I remember one of the people in the news anchor said, "Well, why are we there?" Well, weapons of mass destruction. And then we later found out they didn't have any of those. Of course they're there because of the oil. You know, it was reported, and it's very easy to find on the internet, with what the United States has done to Iraq. With the weaponry we took in, the money we spent on war, if we were to give the Iraqis an option, we could have gave them this. Either we'll come in and do what we've done, or we'll give every man, woman, and child $125,000. Because that's what it comes out to. You know, I dare say if they were to come to the House of Yahweh, we would say, well, give us the money for the peaceful solution and you get back out. We'll do just fine on our own. Because, you know, it does, and we're going to get into that. It does take money to do this work. Nobody wants money for profit. It's all, the profit we get, the gain we get is bringing peace to this nation and bringing peace to our lives. And that's what we want. Now, Pastor says that this is not going to kill just 10,000 or so, but a third of the people over the fourth part of the earth. A third of the people over the fourth part of the earth. Now, turn over to verse 59, because we really want to get the rest of this in. Verse 59, and of course remember Matthew chapter 24 and verse 29, it talks about immediately but after tribulations, which that's going to be fulfilled. It goes right along with Revelation chapter 6 about the stars falling from heaven, and of course it would be just as in the days of Noah, as Matthew chapter 24 says. They will be eating and drinking and making merry and doing the things they want to do. And of course Pastor goes down and he continues speaking of Moshe chapter 3, where would Yahweh not have a work in these last days? And of course he would have a work. He said he would have a work. He said where it would be and who would be doing it. And he said that he would call people out to assist this man that is doing it. And of course he said that he would be his spokesperson, who would rule as Yahweh rules. And that's exactly what Pastor is, one who rules as Yahweh rules. And then let's go back up to verse 57 first. And it says, Moshe 3 again, notice verse 6. Will a trumpet be blown in the city, and the people not be afraid? Will iniquity be taking place in a city or in the cities, and Yahweh also not have a righteous work? Well, right there he says, well, of course. You know, here's, of course, Malcolm X, Malcolm Z and P and Paul and so forth. And he's got a lot of Baptist, Methodist, Church of Christ, and he's got all of these things. And Yahweh also not have a righteous work there. You know, colleges are one of the greatest ways to show money doesn't fix problems. You can go on these facilities, look at their buildings, look at the magnificent technology they have, and then look at the STD problems that run rampant in their colleges. Look at the lack of respect, the lack of responsibility, the things that aren't even in the college. Of course, college is 4 years of fun. That's what it's supposed to be. And of course, you get a degree, and then you go work at Walmart. And you enjoy that for a little while. And that's what society has become. But you really don't care because mom and dad paid the bill. In Genesis chapter 49 and verse 1, it says that in the last days I'll show you what's going to take place among the tribes who now are universal. Now that's, of course, speaking of the Catholic Church. It sits on the 7 hills. They have the world. They have the whole world, and you're part of it. I could take time to read you the article of the Indians. They are given $156 million something to the Indians, American Indians. You know, I told you what took place. They would kill families. They would put their children in orphanages. Well, now that comes out after I said that, but the way then this article comes out showing this very thing. These children, American Indians as they call them, they're actually Hebrew people who came here from Galilee. Yes, they were raped, they were put in orphanages, and they were raped. And you can even go into the Cherokee Museum, which is actually in Cherokee, North Carolina. And great detail in there about the things that took place. And they actually have a section set up that shows how one of the Cherokee orphans were raped by the Catholic priest. And it's a whole section in there about that specific story. And, of course, you know that with the Hopi Indians also, some of the great Khans have brought things on that. But the information's out there for anyone to read. If you have time, if you're caught up on all the reading we have here, the information is there. It's not a secret what's taking place in this world. You just have to siphon through, of course, the garbage that comes with it, as they sugarcoat it quite well. But we know what the plan of Yahweh is, and we should know how to look through these things. Now look over to verse 64. In verse 64... Pastor says, I put this in a sheet right here where I could read it to you. About 14 million people. Let's see, I told you last time we're reaching all but 10 countries. Now it's down to 7. And of course, now we've reached all of them. Every one of them have been reached, and he announced that during the feast one time. We're reaching this work. The only 7 countries that we're not reaching, but there are only 7 countries we're not reaching, but we're working on those too. And of course, the body did finally achieve that goal, getting it to every country. And I want to tell everyone who's hearing me, you can be a part of this work if you want to. You can be a part of this last day's work of the 2 witnesses with your tithe and offerings. And they're certainly welcome. This one work alone is costing $405 a day. $405 a day. Now that's just one part of the work. One part. You know, that $405 a day adds up to $147,000 some odd dollars. One part. That is a tremendous amount of money when it's being done with tithe and offerings. Now that's just one work. That's not all of them. Some of them we cry every month because we work out a contract where it was supposed to be $20,000. And then we get the bill. Of course, we agreed to pay in euros, and we get the bill, and it's $28,000 instead of $20,000. Of course, because the euros being worth more than $1, we have to pay more American dollars. So it's kind of a challenge sometimes, but Yahweh's making a way, and you can be part of this. You can be a part of it. Don't forget it. We can use $1 million or $2 billion, you know, and that sounds like a lot of money, but look and see how much a bomb costs. Truly look and see how much one bomb costs. And that is nothing compared to what is spent on war. Absolutely nothing. It only sounds like a lot of money to us because we've done all of this work with the little we've been given. And I urge and every one of you, you know, get the things you need, let go of the things you want, and put everything you have into getting this work done. We're almost at the very end. Now, Pastor says we've got 3 weeks till the feast, and of course, this was a sermon given in March the 26th of 2011. I think we've got 3 months right around now before the next feast. But only 3 weeks. You need to start planning to have a joyous time in Yahweh. Planning on a job in the house of Yahweh, or in the house. That's one way of having a joyous time, serving others. Don't go out on your own seeking a job. Come to the supervisors. That's what they're there for, and start learning to be a supervisor. He's actually telling each and every one of us, go find a supervisor, learn to do a job, and learn to become a supervisor yourself. Learn to become a leader. You know, Pastor once said that a true leader teaches others to be leaders. That's what a true leader does. Anybody can find followers, but a true leader teaches others to be leaders. And I really think that that's going to be one of Pastor's greatest accomplishments in these last days, is the amount of leaders and teachers and directors that he's going to turn out through what Yahweh has given him. And once again, it's being done with less than what is spent on one bomb. And I think it's amazing what Yahweh is going to accomplish with the things that Hillel just spent so much money over but couldn't accomplish any of it. But once again, go find a supervisor, learn to be a supervisor. We're needing teachers, brethren, too. We're going to need them greatly. I think shortly after the feast, we do want to honor the request of going out to the different countries. We see that in prophecy, and we have a training period going on, and it's going to be intense during the feast too. And of course, this training period takes place every feast and every Sabbath day. This training period, some people may think it may not look like much. But when you go out to teach, what is it you think you're going to teach? You're going to teach the very things you've been taught, the things that you have. The only thing you have when you're standing up in front of a group of people are the things that you've placed in your mind. That's it. And as the Peaceful Solution teaches, garbage in, garbage out. Yahweh plainly told us not to worry about what we would say, because he would give us the words to speak. But those words are only given to us through the mouth of the one sent. And when we allow those things to come into our mind, praise Yahweh. When we allow those things to come into our mind, of course, we can repeat them. But we have to do it through repetition. Putting and applying our minds to taking on these things, to taking on the character of Yahweh, and to become like Yahweh. You know, we didn't become evil and wicked in one night and one day, and we won't become righteous and completely perfect in one night. We have to work on it. We have to get it out. Look over to page 124, and we'll close with this. It says, the Sabbaths given to man by Yahweh are actually the beginning of your opportunity to train for a place in Yahweh's kingdom. Yahweh created you for that purpose. But that's not all. Yahweh created mankind for the purpose of making them into totally righteous teachers of total righteousness like himself, so they could become his family and be used as such throughout all eternity. Now, if we refuse the Sabbath, if we refuse the classes, then remember, we refuse the training that we've been given to actually do this job. And if we won't do the job, then of course it will be given to another. So I urge everyone, please put every effort you have into getting this great work and pushing it forward in not only your own life and your family's life, but also letting it spread amongst others. At this time, if everyone will please stand. Glorious and most honorable Father, whose name is Yahweh. Father, this is your servant, Khan Eli Haller Hawkins, coming before you, being a seed of the seventh Malach in these last days, the great Kahan Yisrayl Hawkins, and through the authority of a high priest, Yahshua Messiah. Most righteous fathers, do come before you here at your great house in Abel with all the brothers and men alike, the deacons and the brothers, and all of those from foreign countries, Father, who are watching at this time. We do pray that your blessing would be upon this great Sabbath day, and that you would help us, guide us, and strengthen us to always take hold of the Sabbath day for what you have blessed it to be. And pray that you would help us to always have our minds open to your way, Father. And if there be any strife or contentions or anything holding us back from you, Father, we do pray that you would help us, guide us, and strengthen us to remove these things far from us, and to learn that the ones that are truly here to work at your great house and to build up your great house are the ones that you've called, Father. And we do pray for your guidance in doing all things in perfect unity, and that all things will be done for the glorification of your house and for teaching this dying world. We thank you and praise you, and we continually pray for the great Khan Yedidia and for his soon release, and for all of those who are crying out, Father, that the doors would soon be open. We do ask all of this once again, being a seed of the seventh Malach, and through the authority of a high priest, Yeshua Messiah. Hallelujah, Yahweh. Praise God.